On today's Newsmakers, the baker's victory, parental rights, and prayer, that and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable news figures. On today's Newsmakers, we begin with Christian baker Jack Phillips, who recently won a major victory at the Colorado Supreme Court. Let's welcome him to Newsmakers. Jack, after more than a decade in court, the Colorado Supreme Court dismissed a lawsuit against you. This is a major victory. What does it feel like right now?
It was when Jake Warner, my attorney at ADF, called me and gave me the good news. I was like, this is just great news. This is so cool. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't expect it right now, but it was good news.
Yes, it is. It is good news for you. And, give us a little bit of a backstory. I know you've shared this story many times, but not everybody knows it because this has been going on for 12 years now. And the first case involved a gay couple, a wedding cake that you had declined. But this case was about a refusal to make a cake celebrating a supposed gender transition, right?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that at Masterpiece Cake Shop, we serve everybody, but we can't create every cake with every message that people ask us to. And in this case, the first case, the two men asked me to create a cake celebrating a same-sex wedding. To me, a wedding cake has an inherent message, and that's a message I couldn't express. In the current lawsuit, an activist attorney here in Colorado called us on the very day that the U.S. Supreme Court granted our case and asked if we could create a cake that was pink on the inside and blue on the outside. And then we were told that those colors were symbolic of celebration of changing gender. And then it became a message that I couldn't create. And we expressed to this person that we would be glad to create other cakes, custom cakes, or welcome to a shop for anything that we would sell, but we couldn't create that cake because of the message.
Jack, what has it been like for you as a Christian and a human being dragged through the courts almost endlessly for more than a decade? This is not something you had on your bingo card, I imagine. And so what has it been like to be in the midst of this for so long?
Well, God was so gracious to us in appointing Alliance Defending Freedom to come to our aid right from the very start. Like 3 days after all the legal stuff started, I was connected with ADF, and they've been there. They've been supportive. They've been encouraging. They've helped me understand everything that's going on, and just the support from the community and from the church, and just all those things rolled together. It's been a very encouraging time, though it seems like it shouldn't. But to understand now better how our government is supposed to work, how our courts do work, and when they work correctly, it's a good thing.
What drove your persistence in continuing to fight? Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people who, when faced with not just the legal battle, the media attention, which comes with, I imagine, threats and nasty messages, a lot of people would say after a year, after a month, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to buckle. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to try to find some sort of middle ground that even if I have to compromise, I don't have to deal with this. What kept you continuing and holding strong? You've held strong throughout this entire thing.
One of my favorite verses in the Bible comes from the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles 16:9, and it says that the eyes of the Lord range throughout the whole earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. So if my heart is fully committed to him, he promises to strengthen me. He's the one who gives us the strength to be committed to him in the first place. So it's kind of a circular thing. He strengthens us and then gives us the faith to be strengthened. So just knowing that God is in control of all these issues and I can trust him implicitly for everything, that's pretty much what's helped keep us going.
What has been the message, and I don't want to focus too much on the negative messages, but what has been the message that you've received that has maybe disturbed you the most or bothered you the most in this? I know you get a lot of support too, a ton of support from people, but what's been maybe something you've gotten that has left you the most concerned in the midst of all this?
I think one of the things that this attorney said at one point was that this was all to correct the errors of my thinking, and that the court was okay with that, that this is about my thought processes and that it could be changed and needed to be changed. So other than that, I can't think of anything. Everything is just God's in control, and he's even in control of that. But that was just one thing that I thought the court can agree with that. So,
Jack, final question for you. What is your message to the people out there who are critics, the people who don't understand, well, why couldn't you just make the cake? I mean, you've heard this argument a trillion times now. Why couldn't you just do it? What do you say to those people to help them understand, and to also not just understand that piece of it, but to really get who you are and what your heart is?
yeah, and John was just talking about it, that, people like me or Baronel Stutzman or Laurie Smith are willing to take a stand. But Debbie and I, my wife and I, before we ever opened the cake shop, had sat down and discussed different things, what kind of cakes we would make and what the shop would look like, those kind of things. And we discussed, we're not going to create cakes for, even way back in the early 90s, same-sex weddings, and it was illegal in Colorado for same-sex couple to get married. It's in the Constitution, one man, one woman. But we had those discussions, or cakes that celebrated marijuana, or cakes that would be un-American or would denigrate or insult other people, including people who identify as LGBT. But we knew we would serve everybody, but we couldn't create every cake. So we drew those lines in the sand, and we knew that we had to stick by them. And God was gracious, and many times, to give us the opportunity to defend our stand and to back us up and to encourage us. And then, again, bringing along Alliance Defending Freedom, they're just the best at doing what they do. And they're not just lawyers. They're lawyers who are passionate about keeping the doors open for the gospel, about family rights and those kind of things. And so they were so instrumental in getting us through all this. But even if they weren't there, we have to stand for what we believe, and we get what we believe from God's word, the Bible.
Well, very good. Yeah, once all the media interviews end, you'll have a little more time to make more of those brownies, cakes, and cookies. Jack, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate it.
Continue to pray for Jack Phillips and others fighting for their religious liberty. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Next up, a California dad is speaking out over the claim his school district won't allow him to opt his children out of gender lessons. Let's welcome Carlos Encinas to Newsmakers. Well, Carlos, I want to thank you for joining us today. There's a lot to unpack here, but you have found yourself, your family, locked in a bit of a battle with a school district there. If you could take us through where this all started.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Billy. So this really just started with my son. Like most parents ask their kids, how was your day? I mean, that's a fairly common thing. Sometimes they divulge, other times they're, we, had a really good play session or time at recess or lunch. But on this particular day, my 11-year-old son, who's in 5th grade, said you could tell he wanted to, there was something on his mind. He said it was just really weird, Dad. And I said, well, what do you mean weird? He said, we had to read this book. It was just, it was just weird. And so I kind of had to pull a little bit out of him on the details, but he told me that he was forced to participate in this activity and read along and watching a video regarding a book called My Shadow is Pink. And at the time I had no knowledge about the book. And so like most parents, I kind of wanted to get more out of him. We didn't have a lot of time because we were on a drive, just driving to his dentist appointment. But he did give me the name of the book that this teacher, his 5th grade teacher, read in class. And so while he was getting his teeth checked, I was on the phone, Googling the book. And in the, 25 minutes, 45 minutes that he was in this dentist appointment, I quickly realized that this book was centered around gender ideology. And, we're wondering not only why was it being read in a 5th grade class, but certainly why were they also making this a part of a weekly activity with their kindergarten buddy class.
But the teacher told you there was nothing. The teacher told you in the initial response that this didn't have to do with gender identity, correct? That it wasn't what you thought it was.
Very directly emailed back and said, this has nothing to do with gender. And of course, I wrote back about an hour later and said, we disagree. And then I escalated this to the principal. My wife and I together, we moved this up to the principal just to understand more about the how and the why. And we just wanted to move on from having a debate around whether the book had to do with gender. We kind of shifted to trying to understand more, but also how do we not be a part of this going forward?
It sounds like there were a couple of things you were looking for. A, you were looking for an assurance maybe that this wasn't going to happen again. You weren't going to get that. But being notified that this was going to happen so that you could opt out, right? That was something that you were looking for. When you approached that part of the conversation and asked to be opted out and to be notified, what reaction did you get from the district?
So I actually asked the principal directly, could this situation happen again? And she very directly said, absolutely, that the teachers have discretion. She kind of pushed things back down to the teachers having the ability to choose a number of different books. It's their call. But I said, I kind of really wanted to focus on, well, let's just talk about this book, this situation, because I know there's a huge spectrum of books out there, and we're just talking about this book. Could this happen again? And she said yes. And she, again, directed me to the state legislature. And then, it was really frustrating. So we were trying to get an opt-out. We just didn't want to participate.
A lot of people, they would bow out of this or they would cave because what you're describing is an extraordinary amount of pressure, not only on you, on the kids as well. What has led you to say, no, I'm not going to cave in? You've now filed, you filed a complaint. And what has made you say, no, we're not going to give up on this. We're going to stand up for what we believe is right. Right.
Well, we're certainly, it's unfortunate that it's gone to this point, but we've been backed up into a corner. Like I said, we tried to use every form, every request. I mean, a lot of emails back and forth to just say that we just want the ability to be not a part of it, and we just want to be notified, and we want to have the ability to opt out. But we've been denied twice. But it's progressed. I mean, we had a real open mind on using, I even offered to come in and have a sit down with the principal. That never happened. I believe in communication. I mean, this is a problem. Let's solve it. Let's talk about it. But the district is just heavy-handed with the letters, and you're not going to have the opportunity to do this. It's going to happen again. This is within our, not only, the way they put it out is not only is it within our legal right to teach this to your kid, but we're required to. So if you have an issue with it, your issue is not with us. Your issue is with the state. You need to go up to Sacramento, and your battle's there. And initially,
good luck fighting that battle on your own, right?
Yeah, and I'm not. This is all so new to me. I've since spoken with a lot of other parents that have not been surprised in that response, because that's a reputation this district apparently has, and the way they respond to issues, not only with this, but a lot of other parental issues. This school puts out a lot of communication on a lot of things, and they allow opt-outs for a lot of different things. They accommodate a lot of, which is fantastic. I mean, they do a great job of accommodating different things for different people, but for some reason, this one, they don't want to do that. And so I would encourage parents to really get informed on that and ask specific questions. And we hope that the court, does what we know they should do for what is right.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, breaking this all down. We'll continue to cover this story as new developments unfold.
Thank you.
We'll continue to cover Carlos's story as new details unfold. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we are sitting down with Joe Kennedy. He's a former football coach whose battle to pray on the 50-yard line went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. He joins us to talk all about that, as well as the new movie Average Joe, which is about his life story. Let's welcome him to Newsmakers. So let's start with coaching, right? We'll get into the Supreme Court victory, the book, the movie, all the things that are going on. What led you into coaching?
That was a total God thing. I didn't know anything about football. I just got out of the Marine Corps. I didn't want to do anything. I thought I was retired. I was out on a run one day, and the athletic director kind of saw this guy with a shirt on that said Bremerton, and call it coincidence, whatever. He pulls up alongside and started a conversation with me, found out I was a Marine, and he said, you know, have you ever thought about coaching? So I was approached, and I was like, no, not interested. He just kept pursuing me. It must have been, divine intervention. And eventually I watched the movie Facing the Giants. And, those Kendrick guys, man, they put a hurting on my heart, and God just spoke to me and said, hey, this is your calling. And that's where it all came from. And I accepted the job of being a coach, and I took it right out of the movie to give God the glory after every game. That was my covenant.
Now, you weren't always a Christian. You
No.
were an atheist at one
yeah.
point. So talk about that a little bit. What was it that brought you into faith?
So it was really my wife. I was failing as a husband. I was previously married, and a couple times I ruined those marriages. I was terrible. I just, everywhere I went, I seemed to just wreck people's lives. And even though I feel like I lived for the world and I was very successful in that, only thing I really wanted was to be married to this girl, this lady that I've been in love with my whole life since we were kids. We met when we were 9. This is my opportunity right at the end of my career. We reconnect. Well, she was a good good Christian girl. She was going to church. So we got married, and I was failing as a husband, as a father. It was horrible, and things were just disintegrating in front of me. And I finally went to church with her, and as things were rapidly falling apart, I had no other place to turn. And I fell onto the altar, and I kind of made a deal with God. I'm always a wheeling and dealing guy. And I said, God, if you give me my wife, I'll give you my life. And my wife saw that of me submitting everything. And we're two become one. That makes sense to me now. And we did become one. And God's been the center of it, and just has led us. I didn't know he was really going to use my life like he did.
Say, you got to be careful with your prayers.
I know, especially with that guy.
Yeah, exactly. You end up obviously flashing forward into the coaching thing. Prayer becomes a big piece of that. What were your thoughts when that started to become a problem for people, when they started to not like that you were praying on the 50-yard line? What was your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I couldn't understand it. Something so simple as a prayer. And I didn't want to create waves with the school. Now, they told me to stop praying with the players. That was unfortunate, but I said, fine, this is your school, your rules. I never prayed with my team again, ever. So I thought this was going to be fine. I'd just continue on doing what I originally set out to do, was praying by myself, thanking God. I did that. Now, when they told me I couldn't no longer do that because people could still see me in public praying.
Because you were doing it after the game.
After the game.
People could join you if they wanted, or they could choose not to.
Right.
Okay.
But I was alone.
Right.
And yeah, that's where the rub came. And they finally gave me a letter of direction that said I needed to choose between my faith and my job. And I was going to be put on suspension until I complied with the school district's policies. So that was a no-win situation. No American should have to choose between their faith and their job. That's just not a good place to be. Not in America.
Well, and you chose to, a lot of people, they step away. They don't want to engage in the legal battle that follows, because the legal battle that followed was a lot of attention. You've done a lot of interviews. You've been out there. You've had to talk about it, and you become a target in some ways. You won, and it was a much bigger case than just your case. It spoke to religious liberty in general in this country and really clarified some of the debating that's gone on, and you had a victory. What was it like to win that victory?
For the personal side of it, it kind of made me feel good knowing that I was right and the First Amendment was live and well. The freedom of speech and the free exercise. Those two things are live and well. And that part of me was really where I started, because only thing I wanted to do was be a coach and to be able to pray after a game. That's what I originally was set out to do. I had no idea it was going to expand the way that it did. But the great thing about the Supreme Court is they opened it up, and we have more religious liberty now than we ever had in the past 50 years. So that is just refreshing. The thing that I really was afraid of is that the lower court standing, because I lost 7 times on the way to the Supreme Court. If the lower court standing would have been kept in place, anybody that showed any religious signs in their workplace could have been terminated. I would have ruined it for everybody. So that was my biggest fear. So the winning wasn't my focus. It was not losing. So.
Right, yeah. Final question for you. Some of the students, caught up in all of this, right? You were coaching, there were students, there were families, there's a community, I'm sure different opinions among them, but what are some of the positive things you've heard? I would imagine your stand had an impact on some of those young people.
Yeah, these kids were great. To see them grow up, I've been to so many of them getting married, to see them getting married, being at their weddings, some funerals, which is horrible. It's like you're burying your kids, going to their graduation, seeing them have kids. It's incredible to see them and knowing that you had this little tiny part in their life, but you're still involved with them. I'll never forget them, and it's cool that they haven't forgotten me.
That's amazing. Well, as always, it was wonderful getting the chance to sit down with you today.
Thank you, brother.
Find out more about Average Joe at averagejoemovie.com. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. That's all for Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head over to the CBN News YouTube channel. That's where you'll find the full interviews you saw on today's episode. Plus, you can check out our new daily Newsmakers podcast. We feature one full interview every single day. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. As for this show, we will see you again next week.